Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I'm the designer of Firefly Misbehavin, which is a deck building game that is set in the Firefly verse. I have it here set up in Tabletop Simulator because it's just a really good way for me to be able to zoom around and show you all of the gameplay. Now this is a game that is for 2 to 4 players. I have it set up here as a 4-player game, so I'm going to do a little bit of setup and then I'm going to dive in and explain how to play. So everybody is going to be playing a different faction in the Firefly verse. So we have here, this is Serenity, and you have a player board. You're going to have a starting deck of 10 cards that is unique to your faction. You're going to start with 1 token credit. You're going to start with a verse token, and I'll explain how those work. You're going to have a little reference card here that shows you how to spend your verse tokens. And on the other side, it's got a summary of the different actions, the breakdown of activation, which is your main action of the game, and some fight information on there. The other factions we have, this is Eves Down. That is the criminal enterprise that's run by Badger. We have Niska, who is a different and maybe worse criminal enterprise. And then we have the Alliance, which, depending on your point of view, are the ultimate bad guys or the good guys. In the middle of the board here, we're going to have 2 boards. We have one that's called the Supply Decks. And then we have the market. So the market here is going to be individual cards. These cards are all basically different and unique, and they're divided up by different areas of space. So we have these are the rim space cards. These are the border space cards, and these are the core space cards. So we're going to shuffle those up, and we're going to have 2 of those face up, and this will comprise our market. And these are cards. It's a deck building game, so these are the kinds of cards that you're going to be able to buy and add to your decks. Now we also have the supply sets here, and there's going to be a shiny. It's going to be one of the supply sets that is in every game, and there's 6 of those. And then the black is another one that's in every game as well, and there's 12 of those. This is actually a negative card. You don't really want to get this one. And then you're going to have 4 more, and they have to have these attributes. So this one that goes here has got to have the fight attribute. This one has to have the deal attribute. This one has to have maneuver, and this can have any of those. And so we've got a bunch over here, and so we're gonna just select some. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can just decide which ones you want. You can use recommended ones. The rule book will recommend some for your first game. And then there are other configurations, and then there's a drafting one where the players take turns picking which ones that they have. And this can have very drastic effects on the type of game that you have in there. So, but we're going to have Misbehave as our fight set. We've got Palaver there for deals. For maneuvers, we have a few to choose from. We've got Full Burn, Crazy Ivan, the Dart, and Fai Wu here. I'm going to take Full Burn and put that right here. And then our 4th set can be anything. And I'm actually going to take the Dart, which has 2 attributes there. It's got Maneuver, which is the leaf, and the pistol for fight. And there are 5 of these. So this is where you've got 5 of the same cards. And these supply cards are a little bit different than the other cards. These, when you can get them the same way, add them to your deck, but when you play one and you use it, it's going to actually return to the supply. So these cards are not going to stay in your deck. The other thing that makes this kind of an unusual deck building game is that it's a tableau builder as well. So everyone has a player board that is going to have 2 rows. It's got an asset area for you to put some cards, and it's got a command area for 2 types of cards, characters and items. Only assets will go in your asset area, but as you can see, these are not the same. So we've got room for 4 assets and 5 cards in the command area for Serenity. If we're looking over here at Eves Down, they can only have 4 of each, but if you look at the command area, they could have 4 characters or 4 items, or 2 and 2. Whereas here, this first slot in the command area for Serenity can only be a character. The last one can only be an item. And when you play cards, you can put them in any of these spaces. So if I'm playing a character, I'll probably want to put it here. It's not going to matter for gameplay which one it's in. But if I put a character here, then I definitely can't put an item there later on. So I like to start with first character I play will go into a character only slot. First item will only go here. If we look at Niska's, he can have 5 assets, but only 4 cards in the command area, and the Alliance can have 5 of each, but they are a little more restricted in their command area, so they can have up to 3 characters or up to 3 items, but certainly not both. So the tableau builder means you're going to be playing cards from your deck into the tableau, which means they're not in your deck anymore. And so it is actually not uncommon in a game of Misbehavin for you to end the game with actually fewer cards in your deck than you start. So everyone starts with 10, and we're going to take a look here. Like I said, everyone has a unique set of cards. So if we look at the cards that start off in Serenity's deck, we're going to get a little breakdown of everything that's in here, and I'm not placing them in the right slots. I'm just kind of spreading them out here. So we've got a couple of characters. We've got Malcolm Reynolds, and he has there's a few things here. We're going to break down the anatomy of a card. So in the top right-hand corner, that 5, that number up there is going to be the cost for buying cards if they're in a marketplace or in the supply set, but it's also the defense. So you notice that that number is in a shield symbol. So if Malcolm Reynolds is ever the target of a fight, he has a natural defense of 5. And but if I were to buy this card, if it were actually for sale, because your starting cards are not for sale, but then this would cost 5, and it would be the influence. So influence is that number on the bottom right-hand corner down here. That's how much influence. So this card has 2 influence, which can be used to buy other cards. It also has 2 power, and power is used in a couple of different ways. It's used in fights. It's also used for one of the objectives to win the game, which I'll cover here in a second. Now over here, we've got a couple of attributes. So he's got the deal attribute, that's the blue one, and he's got the fight attribute. So this is a card that can be used to make deals and to participate in fights. And then there's a unique ability here in this part of the card. And you can see that his has a little lightning bolt in front of it, whereas Hidey Hole has an ability that doesn't. So that'll come into play when we talk about activations. But everybody's got a unique ability. So almost every card in the game, there's a couple that have no abilities, but almost every card has a unique ability. It's got could have attributes, 1 or more attributes, could have a certain amount of power, could have a certain amount of influence. So all the cards kind of do double duty at the minimum. If we look at their other character, we've got Zoe, very similar. She has a slightly lower defense at 4. She has the same attributes. She's got a unique ability, 2 power, 1 influence, so she can be used to buy cards as well. We also have 2 copies of You Can't Take the Sky From Me. So this is a card that is, it's got a very low defense, but it's not super useful, has no influence, does have 2 power, and we'll see a couple of different ways that Serenity can take advantage of that. Speaking of Serenity, we have this. This has an attribute that down here, that is the ship attribute. It's got a high defense value, it's got a lot more power, still some influence. We've got an item here, the standard Radion Accelerator Core, another item, Brown Coat, another item, Frontier Model B, which has the fight attribute. We have an asset, which is the common area, and then we have another asset, the Hidey Hole. So those are the cards that are in this deck here, and so that's what Serenity is starting off with. And the other factions have their unique cards. So Badger will be in here, and Niska and some other characters are in there, and there's some characters in the Alliance deck as well as their ship. And these are the only 2 factions that start with a ship. So that may be important later on when we talk about maneuvers. So the way that the game is going to work is like any deck building game. You're going to have a hand of 5 cards. So I'm going to draw 5 cards here, and we can see that I've drawn Malcolm, and I'm actually going to drag these out onto the table just so that we can see them a little bit better. But normally these would be up in my hand and nobody would see. So I've got a character here. I've got a couple of assets, a couple of items. I have 2, 3, 4 influence, and that is going to be used for a recruit action. And recruit action is where you add a card to your deck. And then I got a couple of other cards. So let's take a look at here, this player aid here. It's actions on a turn, and you can perform these in any order. So there are 4 different types of actions that you can do. Now, most of these you can only do once. So we're going to start with recruitment, and that is where you're using influence to buy a card. So like I mentioned here, I've got 4 influence. So if I wanted to use that influence, what I would do is I would take one or more of these cards and I would play them to my display area. So the display area is actually right off the board. It's not part of your tableau here. So if let's say that I did this, this gives me 4 influence, 2, 3, 4, and I can get anything in the market that costs 4 or less. Now, if there's a couple of 2s here, but I only have 1 recruit action. So normally I want to take advantage of that and get something that gets there. So I cannot afford the Dortmunder here. That costs 7. And this is a very powerful card. It's a ship. It can be used in a fight. It's got a lot of power, and it's got a special effect with influence. Can't afford to carry in house either, another asset. But if we move up here, I could get the Graviton Accelerator. And I could get the security interface pad. So this is, it's got an influence. It's got an interesting ability here. This has no influence, but it's got a couple of power. Probably what I would do, though, knowing who I am, is I would spend that to get a Misbehave card. So when you recruit a card, that card goes into your recycle, so basically your discard pile, and then all of these cards that were used for that recruit action, once it's resolved, they also would get discarded. And that's my recruit action. So that's how that works. You're spending influence to recruit a card, goes into your deck, but it's discarded. We're going to draw it later on, because when we end our turn, all the cards that we don't use or play down to the tableau will be discarded as well, and we would draw 5 new cards. And then at the end of that turn, we would want to draw 5 cards, but after we discarded everything, we would actually shuffle these cards up and form our deck again. And that's pretty standard for a deck building game, so nothing different there. Now, let's take a break here and talk about what's the object of the game. Well, for a standard game, you're going to try to start your turn with a certain amount of power in your tableau, and that's going to be depending on the number of players. So if we're doing a 4-player game, then it's 11 power, and that means cards with power in your tableau adding up to 11. So that brings us to our next action, which is an activation. And activation has 4 flavors. There's 4 different ways we can use this action here of an activation. And the first one here is to play a card to your tableau. So one of the reasons why you would want to do that is because that's the objective. So I've got here, you can't take this guy away from me. And let's just say that, well, let's discard that. And we're going to draw our 5 cards again. And we're going to take a look here. And I've got the other one here. So I might say as for my activation, I'm going to play this card into my tableau. So this is an asset. It's got to go into my asset area. So I use my activation to play a card. So this card is in my tableau, and I now have 2 power, because that's what we need. I've got 2 power in my tableau. If I had a whole bunch of cards out here, let's say this one was already out here, and I had Zoe out there, and let's put this common area out there as well. That's an asset. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 7. I only need 4 more power in my tableau, but I have to start my turn. So if I were to play a card down, and let's say that this was the last one that I needed, and let's say this got me up to 11, I have to announce I have reached this threshold of having enough power. When my turn is over, the other players are going to have a chance to try to do something about this. It's somewhat limited, as you will see here in a moment, but they do have, and they don't have to wait until I have reached this threshold. They can start trying to do something about it much earlier, and we'll talk about that when we talk about fights. But that is how you win the game, is you start your turn with at least this much. You can have more, and that's usually a good idea. If you can find a way to put down more power than you actually need to win, that helps you to fend off the other challengers. So playing a card. That is our first way of using an activation as we look here at the 4 activations. Now, it talks about play a card. You may then trigger. So triggering is what we call using a card for its ability. So let's say that it's my turn, and as my activation, I want to play Zoe down into my tableau. But I also want to use her ability. So it says when I play a card, I may then immediately trigger it. And you turn it sideways to show that it has been triggered. That means you can use your ability. And like I said, this one has a lightning bolt similar to Malcolm's. That means that that ability by itself needs an activation. But if you're playing a card, you can trigger it as part of the same activation. So her ability is to draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card from your hand. So I've got no deck, so I would shuffle up this right here, draw 2 cards, and then discarding 1 card from my hand. So I'm going to discard this hidey hole because it has no influence. So we're going to say that this was my first thing that I did on my turn. I still have my recruit action, and I've got 3 influence here. I've got 2 and then 1 from there, so I can get something that costs 3 by playing these cards into my display area. But I've also got this common area which has 1 influence here. And if I want, I can pull a card out of my tableau into the display area to use it for its influence. And let's say I do want to get something. I want to get this after all. So I got the security interface pad. That's going to go here. These cards here are going to be discarded because they were used for this recruitment action. And notice that Zoe has 1, but while she's triggered, she can't be moved into the display area. So I couldn't use her ability and then also use her card for its influence to get up to 5 influence there. So I was stuck with what was untriggered in my tableau or in my hand. So now I'm out of cards. There's really not much else I can do. So my turn is over. And normally what happens is you draw 5 cards. But if you end your turn with 1 or more triggered cards in your tableau, you're going to draw 1 fewer card for each triggered card. So I'd actually only draw 4 cards. I'd get these 3, and then I'd shuffle these up and I'd draw 1 more. Now at the end of your turn, let's say I'm like, I don't really want to, I want to be able to draw 5. You can always discard 1 or as many as you want of the cards in your tableau, whether they're triggered or untriggered. So I could say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and discard Zoe. I played her so that I could use her ability, and that was so I could get more cards to get more influence, and that was the reason why I did that, so that I can draw 5 cards. Or I can leave her out there, just draw 4. At the start of my next turn, any triggered cards automatically reset. So I could then, I'm closer to getting this objective if I leave her out there. So I'm 2, 4, 6, 7 right here with these cards. So that may be what I want to do. But when we talk about fights, only drawing 4 cards could put me at a disadvantage. But we'll say that that's what I did. And that's this first thing. So we talked about playing a card, and then you may then trigger. Now the second way you can use your activation is to just trigger cards. So let's say it's my next turn. And I remember I only drew 4 cards because I left Zoe out there triggered. So it's my next turn, and I'm going to be shuffling these up as well and drawing 1, and these are all in my hand. So I've got these 4 cards. Zoe resets, and I've got 1, 2 influence here. Plus, remember, I can use her influence, but then she's going to be discarded. She'll go to the display area for her influence, and then when I buy whatever I'm going to get with my recruit action, she goes to the recycle. So I maybe want to leave her out there because, again, I want to get closer to that win condition. So I only have 2 influence, and the only thing that I could get here, and of course this replenishes, I could get a shiny, and shiny is a very good utility card, so I might end up doing that. But remember, I have an activation here on my turn, and I can do these actions in any order. So I might decide that, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to play a card down because I really want to use Zoe's ability again. So I'm spending my activation to just trigger her ability again. And that lets me draw 2 cards, and then I discard a card. So any one of these cards from my hand. And again, I think I'll discard this brown coat. It doesn't have any influence or power, so that goes away. But now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 influence, and so I can get a much better card on this turn. I could get Fendress. It actually looks pretty good. Or I could get the Carrying House, which is also good. That has, in fact, that has 1 power and influence, so I might do that. So my activation was just to trigger her ability. So I'm not playing a card this turn because that would also cost an activation, and I only have the 1 activation. So I have decided to spend all these cards. Those would all go up there. That's 5 influence. I'm getting the Carrying House. That goes into my deck. These guys get discarded. That's all I can do. This gets discarded as well. And then I end my turn, and again, I'm only going to draw 4 cards if I leave Zoe out there, and I decided that's what I'm going to do. So I would get these 2 cards, and then I'm going to shuffle this up and draw 2 more. So shuffle those up, 1 and 2. And so that would have been my turn, and then the other players would go. So now let's look at, it's my turn again, and start of my turn, this resets. And once again, I've got 1 recruitment, I've got 1 activation. But we're going to talk about the next thing that I can do. My next action is verse acquisition. So let's talk about these verse tokens. Well, start with 1, and there's 5 more that each faction can get, and these are very useful for a couple of reasons. So on this card here, at the top of the card, it tells me how I earn a verse. So it says untriggered character in tableau and discard untriggered cards from hand or tableau with a total of at least 4 power. Now that's how I earn one. It's going to be different for all of the other factions. So let's talk about what this means. First of all, it says untriggered character in tableau. So I've got Zoe in my tableau. She resets at the start of the turn, so she is currently untriggered. And then it says discard untriggered cards from hand or tableau with a total of at least 4 power. So that means I'm discarding cards. They can be in my tableau and or in my hand. So I might say, you know what, I'm going to discard this one. That's 3 power because Serenity is 3. And I'm going to discard the hidey hole here. And that gets me up to 4 power, and that's how I earn my token. Voila. So that was this action right here. It's an action, so it's not an activation. I still have my 1 activation, and I could decide to use it to play a card down, and maybe I will do that. I will say, sure, I'm going to play this item down. So that's an item, and that's 2 power, so I'm at 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And let's talk about the final action. The final action you can do, and it doesn't have to be the final. It can be the first one, remember, in any order. But the final one are the ones that we've looked at because we've talked about recruitment. We've started talking about activation and verse acquisition. It's spend verse. And here, these things you can only do once, but this you can do as many times as you can afford. And so you're spending these verse tokens to do actions. So I could spend 2 to get another activation. I could spend 2 to draw a card. I could spend 2 to get another recruitment. We'll talk about retain and replay maneuvers here in a minute. But if I wanted to, I used 1 activation to play this card. I could spend these 2 verse tokens, and they'd go back over here to get another activation. And I could decide to activate Zoe for her ability. Or I could say, yeah, I'm going to play another card. And so, yeah, I'm going to do that. Put the security interface pad down. So now I'm at 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. I'm 1 power away from achieving my objective. And my turn is over. I'm out of cards. I'm out of activations. I don't want to do a recruitment action because I don't want to use up any of my influence that's in the tableau, and I've got none in my hand. So I would end my turn. I would draw these 5 cards. And this is what I've got going on for my next turn. So those are the different actions. Let's go back to activations because we've talked about these first 2. Play a card, and you can choose to activate it to trigger it for its activatable ability. And you can just trigger a card with an activation. And before we go further, you'll notice that most of these other abilities do not have that symbol, which means you can do them at any time. So it says discard from your hand to cancel a deal or a steal. So if somebody else is making a deal or stealing something, I could discard this, but it has to be from my hand. So this one, I can't use this ability. This one, it says trigger this card and a ship in your tableau without effect, then draw a card. Now I currently don't have a ship in my tableau, so I can't use that one. But this one says discard when a market deck would be replenished. Search that deck for any card to put into the market. Well, we would be replenishing this at the end of my turn, so I might decide that, yeah, I'm going to do this. I mean, right now there really isn't a good reason for me to do this, but let's say that I do. Remember, I would only draw 4 cards, so this would actually have to happen before my turn would end, so I'd only get 4 cards if I want to leave it out there. But I could then search this deck for something to put out there. I'm not going to do that because, again, at this point, there's not a specific reason why I would want to do it, although there will be times when you do want to do it. And this one is I could discard this from my tableau for another activation, but then I have to add the black to my deck, and that is this card that has no power, no influence, and it's hard to get out of your deck. So it's just going to clog up the works there. So instead, I'm not going to use any of these abilities. We're just going to skip around. Again, the other players would take their turns. We're coming back to me because we're going to talk about the next way you can use an activation. So we've got play to your display area to make a deal, and then we have play to your display area to pick a fight. So we're going to start with the deal one first. So to do that, you need a card that has the deal attribute. And so we've got one in my hand, got one in my tableau. But remember, I'm trying to leave her in the tableau if I can because it's helping me to win. So it's my next turn. I'm going to say, yeah, I want to make a deal. So making a deal, that lets me play. I play Malcolm out there. He has the deal attribute. Making a deal is very much like recruitment. It's going to be about adding a card to my deck. How is it different? It's different in a couple of ways. First of all, it uses up an activation. So I'm using my activation. This does not count as a recruitment. So I could still do a recruitment action afterwards, and we just might. Let's see how this plays out. I still get to use the influence. So I've got 2 influence here, and I can now bolster this with other cards that have influence. So I'm going to add these guys out here as well. So that puts me up to 4 influence. Another way it's different is I can now spend credits as influence. So I've got 1 credit. So now I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5, and I'm looking for something that costs 5. And there's a couple of things here. I could get Fendris, is pretty good. I cannot afford that, and then I don't need 5 to get these guys. But let's just say that I had 2 credits. So because I want to do a different example here. So that puts us up to 6. So now I'm like, yay! I can afford this Azrev, which is very good. It's a ship. It can be used in a fight. It's got influence. It's got power. It's got a pretty good ability. This card goes right into my hand, and instead of into my discard because I made a deal. Now this stuff goes back to the bank. These guys now go here. But I've got this. I still have my activation. So I can say, yeah, I'm now going to play that. And this is an asset. So this goes right here. And now I'm at 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm at 12. And I have now set off this win condition. And let's say, yeah, that's all I'm going to do here. So I'm going to discard these guys. I've got no triggered cards in my tableau. So I'm down to only 7 cards in my deck. And I'm going to be able to draw 5. So I've got that. That's pretty good. That's okay. That's okay. I'm looking for... Oh, all right. I was hoping to draw Malcolm. But that's a deal. Now, let's say that I'd made that deal and I still had, a couple of these cards in my hand. Or cards with influence in my tableau. I could then still recruit. And so that's the important thing about the deal, is you could do a deal and a recruit and get 2 cards on the same turn. So that is useful. Now we're going to back this up as well, and we're going to say that we've got a couple of these verse tokens as we talk about this last thing here, which is pick a fight. And in fact, I am going to, I'm just going to bring Malcolm out here the last card. All right, for this example here, we'll keep this one here. So let's say that I have not yet triggered the end game, or actually no, it can work either way. We're going to show a fight here, so we'll say that it's my turn, and I want to pick a fight. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a card. We're going to put Wash out here in this tableau with eaves down, and we're going to put this very fine hat there, and we're going to grab, sure, we'll put Badger out there, and I'm going to say he's got a bunch of these cards out here. I want to grab a henchman, if I can find one. There's two in here. There we go. This will help us for our example. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a fight. So it's my turn. We'll say it's my turn. And I want to pick a fight. So first of all, I'm going to take the fight target token. And you're picking a fight over something. And so I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to fight over Wash here. Because what I want to do is I want to nab Wash and add him to my deck. So I've put this target token so this player knows that I'm picking a fight with them. And this is the target. And so Wash has a natural defense of 5. So that 5 is going to be for the defense of this player. So in order to nab Wash, I've got to equal or exceed that 5. And that is by playing cards to my display area, but they all must have this fight attribute. So I'm going to start off here with Malcolm. He's got the fight attribute. Using my activation to say I'm picking a fight. I've got 2 power here, and look at this. I've got this Misbehave card, and that is 6 power total. So 2 and 6. Power under the gun. I'll let you know that's the number that we're looking for here. So now this Misbehave has got some other abilities, but I'm just using it for its power in a fight. And we'll talk a little bit more about the supply cards here in just a sec. And so I just play cards until I've hit that number. So I've hit it. But this player is not completely defenseless. They're able to play cards from their hand or from their tableau that have the fight attribute as well. And so let's say that they've got, we're going to put some cards. Well, we'll just say that these are in their hand. We don't know what's in their hand, but we're going to draw some cards here. And look at that. We've got another henchman. So they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to play this henchman out to their display area. And that power gets added to the defense. So we're up to 7 here. So now it goes back over to here. They have to try to equal or exceed 7. So now none of these cards have got the fight attribute, but cards from the display or from the tableau can be used as well by being moved to the display area as long as they have the fight attribute. So we're going to move this Frontier Model B up there. So this is puts us up to 8. Now, this player, first of all, this henchman has the ability, you can add 1 power by spending a credit token. So they could do that. But this player can see that I've got 2 more power right here from Zoe that I can move out there if I want to. So this would go back and forth until a player is unable or unwilling to keep adding. So what they've decided is to say, yeah, it's over here. I don't want to play any more cards. I don't want to move this guy out to fight as well, and I don't want to spend my credit. So I'm going to lose this fight. So Wash would go right into my hand, just like with the deal. He goes into my hand, and then there's always a prize for who wins. The reward is you can draw a card, gain a verse token, or gain a credit. And so I've decided to gain a verse token, and to add that to my pile here. And this player, this one goes away. And these would go away as well. They would get, well, first of all, the Misbehave goes back to the supplier. Remember, when you play it, it's going to go back. And there's nothing I can do about that. These would go into my recycle, but I may spend verse tokens to retain. And that is after, it's after both a deal or a fight. I can spend, and I'm going to spend 1 verse token because I want to retain Malcolm. He's going to go back into my hand. Now, if he'd come out of the tableau, he would still go back into my hand. He would not go back into the tableau. So this one's going to go away. I've got these cards. I've used my activation to pick a fight. I still have a recruit action, and I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 influence because I can use wash right away. It went back into my hand. And for 6, I could get almost anything in here. Still can't afford this Dortmunder, which would be a nice card to get. But 6 is pretty good. The other thing I could do is I could say, you know what? I still have 2 verse tokens, so I'm going to spend those for an activation. I could spend them to try to draw another card because, you know, what I would not have gotten any influence. But I would like to use that activation to play Malcolm down. And actually, I'm going to play Wash down because and I'll explain why here in a second. So that's 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I now have enough. And these guys are all going to get discarded now because I had that extra activation. And actually, I still have, yeah, I would actually probably still do a recruit. And I would recruit to pick up another one of these yet again. So I don't know why that's doing over there. That is, yeah, that was accidentally from my deck. So I've done that. And the reason I would do that is because I'm going to draw this one card and I'm going to draw some more. And what I want to do is I really want to get cards with fight. So there's one. That's nice. There's another one. All right. So that's pretty good. I've got 6 fight because what's going to happen is these other players are going to try to either nab or dispatch cards. And nab means if they win the fight, they're going to take it and add it to their deck. Dispatch, they might say, yeah, I just want to dispatch this card right here. And that means that if they win the fight, it just goes out of my tableau. And if I lose that fight and this card goes away, I'm now at 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so that will have averted the win. And the reason they might choose this card is because it only has a 1 defense. So it's not great to have out there because it's, you know, but again, I've got 4, 5, 6 fight. So that's a 7, which is not easy to get. And they don't have a lot of cards with fight. They got 1 henchman here, 1 henchman there. That gets them up to 2, 4, 5, 6 if they've got the credits, and they currently don't have enough to do that. So that's the reason why. Now I could only use this card once; it would go away. But if I win a fight, I could get this card, and I could spend the verse token that I get for winning to retain it and keep it in there. And so I'm hoping to fend off everybody. And the reason that, you know, 4-player game, it's going to be tougher because you have everybody else going after you. But you know, they have to have the right cards, or they have to end up using cards from their own display or tableaus, which means that they'll be out of the tableau. So sometimes you get lucky with that. But the other thing again is if you're recruiting cards that you can use. So I would love to have this card in my deck and this card out here so that I'm not drawing it. So that's probably what I would have done. Is at some point I would have played Serenity because that's 3 power, 6 defense. Very hard for them to take that away. And so now I've got 2 more fight that's in my deck, and there's only 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards in my deck. I'm more likely to draw that fight. But that is how these actions work. And now you know how all the actions work. And so, yeah, in terms of strategy, again, when you're playing this with this as your goal, you want to be able, you don't want to trigger that win until you feel like you can defend it. And like I said, you don't have to wait until somebody has reached this in order to pick a fight with them. So if this is what I drew for my turn, you know, it's my turn, and let's say that I haven't quite set off. Let's say that this is in my, and I've got this out there. It's no power, but I might play this card down here so that I'm not drawing it all the time. So here I've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still have enough here, so you know I might wait until to play with the last card. But on my turn, if I haven't triggered the win, this is 2, 4, 6, 10 power that can all be used in a fight. And I might go after somebody's card. I might go after Badger because he's got 2 power and 2 influence, and he's got a really great ability. You can use him to gain 3 credits. And so this is something I would do earlier in the game. If I've got this much fight on my turn, I might say, yeah, let's go pick a fight because this 10 is a lot of power. Let me assure you. So that is the strategy, is to do that. Now, you'll notice here it says, or objective. And that is because we have got these episode cards, and these change up the game a little bit. So you might say, yeah, you know what, we're going to do this. It's going to change. It tells you which supply cards to use. It changes some rules of the game. They also have, some of these will have new objectives. So, and it will say on there, if I can find one. Here we go. Yeah. Start your turn with at least 2 locations from your market in your tableau. So locations are going to be cards that have the location attribute. So let's see if we can find one here. There's going to show up in the market. So here we have Osiris, and that symbol right there, the little purple planet icon, that's a location. And so if I've got a couple of locations in my tableau at the start of my turn, then I win the game. And so, and here with Dirt Kissin' as the episode, it's power in your tableau, which is your normal win condition, or start with at least 2 locations. And you could possibly have enough. You could have both. So let's say that this wasn't in here. On my turn, let's say I had another location out there, and I play this one. This one triggers the 2 locations, and it triggers the power. And so basically what's going to happen is, in order to stop me from winning, they can't target this, because that's only going to take 2 power out, and I'll still have the 2 locations. They got to go after a location, and they tend to have a very high defense. They're expensive cards. So that is a way where you could, it's really hard for somebody to stop you from winning when you do something like that. So yeah, this is basically how you play. The last thing I want to talk about is maneuvers. So we've got 2 maneuvers in the game, and they've got the ship icon, but it's in the top corner. And the top corner doesn't mean it's an attribute; it means it's a prerequisite, and there's another version of that we're going to talk about here in just a second. So the full burn, in order to play this card, I have to have a ship in my tableau. So let's say that I've got a full burn in my hand. So I'm going to get this out there, and if I had the Azrev out there, I've got 2 ships. So either one of those would work. So first of all, and I want to grab a couple of these as well, because this is going to be pretty neat. Playing this doesn't count as an action. It's just a free thing you can do on your turn. So I'm playing this full burn. It says draw 1 card, then discard a card, then force a player to add the black to their recycle, or I may draw 1 more card. Now you'll notice that it also has 3 power. So remember that my way that I earn verse is I have to have an untriggered character, so wash would count, and then I have to discard, I've got to discard 4 power. So I could discard this 3 plus this 1, and that would earn me a verse token. And discarding it doesn't count as playing it to the display area, so it stays in my deck. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. But I'm playing this. On my turn, I'm going to play this. This lets me draw a card. So I'm drawing a card, and then it says, then discard a card. So I might say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to discard this one right here. Because I might be looking to get into a fight. So, and look at this, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 power right there. And it says, then force a player to add the black to their recycle or draw 1 more card. So I might say, you know, I want to draw 1 more card. I'm hoping to get Malcolm, and there he is. So now, boom, I've got a lot of power here. This is a maneuver, though. And if we look down here, it says replay maneuver with the verse token. So I can say, you know what, I am going to spend a verse token, and I get to do this effect again. So it's, first of all, it's draw a card, then discard a card, and I might say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to discard that card. Whoops. And I've got 5 cards in here. Any one of these have fight, or am I all fighted out? No, that's it right there. So at this point, it's either force someone to add the black or draw another card. Well, I don't need to draw another card, so I am going to force somebody to add this to their deck. So it won't have an immediate effect, but later on, when they're hoping to draw certain cards and they get this one, they're not going to be happy about that. But let's say I can do this again. I've still got another verse token. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this again. It's draw another card, and then I might have them add another, the black, to their recycle, just clogging it up. And if I had all 6 of my verse tokens, I could do this 6 times in a row if I want. So that is it's one of the things that makes the verse tokens even more powerful and useful. and it's one of the things that makes these maneuvers really good. If we look at this one right here, the dart, notice the dart has the fight attribute. So if I wanted to, I could play this into my tableau for its power. And this replay this, I'm not playing it for its effect, so I couldn't use verse tokens to do that again. But instead of using this in a fight, let's say that I just wanted to use its effect. So I'm playing this to my display area, and it says trigger a card in any player's tableau for no effect or gain an activation. So I might say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to gain an activation. I'm going to put Malcolm down there. And then let's say that I had another one of these. I say, yeah, I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to play this down there. And this is going to put me at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 power. That is a lot of power. And this will go away. Or, you know, I could triggering somebody else's. So I could say, yeah, I'm triggering this one, which means you're not going to be able to use this card in a fight, because it's triggered. Once it's triggered, it can't be moved or used for anything. It'll reset at the start of this player's turn. But yeah, and again, if I've got more verse tokens, I can do this again, and I can use either effect when I do that. And one of the reasons that you want to go over this is because if on my turn, I've done this on my turn, I'm ready to win the game, somebody wants to come after me. If they go after me and they knock out or nab one of my assets, I can't be attacked again until my next turn. So if they are really trying to get me down to under 11, because that didn't do it. You saw I was at 16, now I'm at 15, and now I can't be attacked again. So they can't take out my assets. I told you there were certain limitations. If they take out my command area, then I can be attacked again. And so they can say, well, we'll target one of these 2s, I guess. But this would put me down to 14. So it means somebody else would have to attack me. And if they took out Wash, well, they took out this one here because it only has a 4 defense, that's still 13. I'm still well over the win condition. At some point, they got to go after one of these, but it might be too late because, again, if I'm at 14 or even if I'm at 13, they take out this one, I'm still at 11. So that's 3 attacks that couldn't get me down below 11. So these maneuver cards, played at the right time, they can be really powerful. And like I said, there's still a couple more. You know, we didn't use Crazy Ivan. That has got some crazy abilities. The Fai Wu lets you basically remove cards from the game. So it's like the sort of trash effect that you would see in something like Dominion. So yeah, there's a couple other, you know, little things that you can do in the game. Like, remember, all these cards in the market have got unique abilities. These are all unique cards. There's only a couple of duplicates. Like there's a couple of Marines and a couple of horses. Everything else is a unique card. So each game of Firefly is going to be very, very different because of the unique abilities that will be on display. We're not going to go, you know, there's over 20 of these market cards. You're not going to see a lot of different cards on here. So it's going to be a lot of variation there. And these, you know, you've got a lot of different supply sets that are going to be in the game. You know, we didn't see a palaver, but this one can make a deal. Whenever you play this card to your display area, you gain a credit, plus it has 2 influence. So if you're making a deal, that's 2. You could use that new credit you just got for 3. So it's really nice to get more powerful cards. That's how you're going to get an IAV Dortmunder or one of these other expensive cards into your decks. So yeah, like this is a game that, while it is a deck builder, it has a lot of things that are not typical to your deck builder. And part of it is that you're keeping a relatively small, lean deck through the game because you're playing cards into your tableau and you're gaining these cards, which you can only really use once, and then they go back here. So you'll be rebuying these as well. You've got the ability with the deals to spend credits, and there's a few ways you can gain credits. Like, so the shiny, you could just say, you know, first of all, it's a cheap card that gives you 2 influence, but you can just play it to gain 3 credits, or you could play it to gain 2 credits and cycle 2 cards. And cycle just means take this card, shuffle it into the deck, and immediately replenish. So you're like, oh, look at that. That's the most expensive card in the game there. So now it's a location, 8 to buy it, but also 8 defense, 5 power. So you get this in your tableau, it's going to be really hard for somebody to take it away from you. And it has 3 influence, so maybe before you put it in there, you're just using it to recruit other expensive cards. So to get this card, you probably would need to make a deal. So get some credits in there. Although, you know, sometimes, again, if you have the right mix, if you've got 2 influence there and 2 influence with this card, yeah, you could maybe be able to afford that one. 2, 4, 6, 8. It's possible, even without making a deal. So yeah, that's how it works. I'm not going to go into, you know, what are all the unique cards and abilities and ways to earn verse. There's some different breakdowns on the different factions in the game. And you can see those videos in this Firefly playlist. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. That's how to learn how to play Firefly Misbehavin, a factions deck building game. I'm Jack Rita. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.